They came with a cross in one hand and a sword in the other. This is not just a metaphor. It was a lived reality for millions in the Philippines and archipelago where faith, conquest, and colonization became inseparable. Welcome to Sands of History, where we unravel the stories buried by empires and silenced by power. If you believe history should be told through the eyes of the colonized, not the colonizers, then you're in the right place. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to support us in uncovering forgotten histories, the financial support links are in the description below. The arrival of Christianity. It was 1521 when Ferdinand Magellan, a Portuguese explorer sailing under the Spanish flag, landed on the shores of what is now the Philippines. He wasn't just looking for spice, she came with a mission: convert the natives to Christianity. Magellan's chaplain, Pedro Valderrama, is said to have conducted the first Catholic Mass in Limasawa. According to colonial records, Raja Humabon of Cebu and hundreds of his followers were baptized shortly thereafter. But baptism was not just a spiritual act, it became a political strategy. As historian Horacio de la Costa put it, to be baptized was to become an ally of the Spaniards. From that moment, Christianity wasn't just about saving souls, it became a tool of empire. Missionaries and militias. With the arrival of Miguel López de Legazpi in 1565, Spain's colonization of the islands began in earnest. Alongside soldiers came Augustinians, Franciscans, Jesuits, and Dominicans, each with one mission: bring Catholicism to every corner of the islands. But conversion didn't happen in a vacuum. Churches were built with forced labor, and indigenous spiritual leaders, Babaylanes, were demonized, persecuted, or executed. Entire belief systems were wiped out and labeled as devil worship. Where there were once animist rituals and ancestral shrines, there were now crucifixes and confessionals. One 17th century missionary wrote, "We burned their idols and sprinkled holy water on the ashes so that the devil would not return." And yet, this wasn't just religious zeal, it was state policy. Reduction, reshaping lives, reshaping land. The Spanish colonial government and the church worked hand in hand to restructure society. Through the policy of reduction, Filipinos were forcibly relocated into new centralized towns, pueblos centered around a church. These were not just communities, they were mechanisms of control. Attendance at Mass was compulsory. Indigenous names were replaced with Spanish ones. Indigenous laws gave way to Catholic moral codes. The friars became more than priests. They were judges, landlords, tax collectors, and rulers. As one Filipino revolutionary later said, the friar was the king in every village. Education and indoctrination. To further tighten their grip, the church controlled education. Schools were set up, but only to teach what the friars allowed. Reading and writing were taught to elites, and girls were usually taught only catechism and domestic tasks. The goal wasn't empowerment, it was obedience. A quote from Father Juan de Plasencia in 1589 reads, "To teach them the doctrine is to make them loyal subjects of the king and obedient children of the church." Christianity in the Philippines became less about individual salvation and more about systemic submission. The rise of Filipino clergy and Spanish resistance. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Filipino clergy began to rise, but only to a point. The Spanish refused to allow Filipinos to hold higher church positions. The secularization movement, a call to allow native priests to take over parishes, was met with hostility. This culminated in the execution of the Gomburza priests, Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamorain, 1872, accused of sedition during the Cavite Mutiny. José Rizal, the future national hero, was deeply inspired by Gomburza. In his novel, El Filibusterismo, he wrote, "I dedicate this book to the memory of the three martyrs. May their blood remain forever sealed in the conscience of the Spanish nation." Christianity and the justification of rule. Colonial authorities repeatedly used Christianity to justify their rule. They claimed Spain had a divine duty to civilize the Filipino people, portraying indigenous cultures as backward and pagan. In a sermon preached in Manila in 1680, a Spanish friar declared, "These islands were plunged in darkness until the Holy Catholic Church brought them light." But for many Filipinos, this light came with chains. Forced tribute, forced labor, and racial hierarchy were all cloaked in religious paternalism. Even revolts against colonial abuse were framed by the Church as acts of heresy or satanic rebellion. Resistance within faith. Still, Christianity did not always serve the colonizers. Some Filipinos used it as a weapon of resistance. Folk Catholicism emerged, combining indigenous beliefs with Christian symbols. The Revolution of 1896 was led in part by educated Catholics like Andres Bonifacio, who saw no contradiction between faith and revolution. Many of the Katipunan's rituals were framed as sacred vows before God, invoking justice and liberation. The transition to American rule. A new cross, a new empire. In 1898, Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States after losing the Spanish-American War. The stars and stripes replaced the Spanish flag. But the Christian mission continued, now under Protestant America. The American occupation reframed Christian influence. Missionary schools expanded, and English replaced Spanish as the language of instruction. The Catholic Church retained power, but Protestant denominations arrived in waves, eager to convert. But make no mistake, religion was still being used as a colonial tool. American Protestant missionaries viewed Filipinos as little brown brothers needing salvation, not just spiritual, but cultural and political. One Methodist missionary wrote in 1902, "Our mission is to lift them from their ignorance and bring them to Christian civilization." Lasting legacies. Today, the Philippines remains the largest Christian nation in Asia, with over 86% identifying as Roman Catholic. Christianity has become deeply intertwined with national identity. Yet the question remains, was it a freely embraced faith, or a legacy of forced conversion and colonial control? Many of the social hierarchies, land inequalities and gender roles established during the colonial Christianization still persist. Church power remains significant in political and cultural life. Christianity gave the Filipino people a shared language of faith, yes, but it also became the soft power of empire. The story of Christianity and colonial rule in the Philippines is not one of pure salvation. It is a story where the sacred was used to justify the profane, where a gospel of love was twisted into a weapon of domination. Christianity, as introduced by the colonizers, was not a liberating force. It was complicit in colonial conquest. It baptized with holy water, but enslaved with chains. It promised heaven, while enforcing submission on earth. A faith that is truly godly can never be used to subjugate a people. Yet in the Philippines, Christianity became an instrument of imperial power, a system that erased identities, reshaped lands, and spilled blood in the name of salvation. Christianity carries a stain in the Philippines, a colonial wound soaked in centuries of violence and exploitation. And some blood, no matter how many sermons are preached or crosses erected, can never be washed away. Thank you for watching Sands of History. If this story moved you, challenged you, or opened your eyes, please like, share, and subscribe. Let this history ripple beyond the silence. And if you believe in telling stories through the eyes of the colonized, not the conqueror, consider supporting us. Your help keeps these stories alive. The financial support links are in the description below. Until next time, this is Sands of History, where the past is not forgotten and the truth still matters.